जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
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 यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यमुनातीरा वनचारी
यमुनातीरा वनचारी
यमुनातीरा वनचारी
यमुनातीरा वनचारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
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 जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यमुनातीरा वनचारी
यमुनातीरा वनचारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Kunj Bihari Radha Kunj Bihari Radhe.
Jaya Radha Kunj Bihari Radha Kunj Bihari Radhe.
Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Bala Deva Mai Subhadra.
Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Mai Subhadra.
Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Bala Gopal Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Giri Govardhan.
Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Bala Gopal Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Giri Govardhan.
Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai.
Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai.
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva.
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Harinama Sankirtana ki
Jai
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai
Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome. We have one video today. Maybe we can get a couple more. Let's see. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna devotees. So welcome to our continued discussion of Chaitanya Caritamrita. So today we're discussing Madhya Lila chapter 21 and roughly text 25 until 125. So the morning reading group is making good progress through these verses, and so we'll try to keep up with their ecstatic study and discuss a few things today from these many beautiful verses. The title of this chapter is The Opulence and Sweetness of Lord Krishna. So we'll talk about both opulence of Krishna today and the sweetness of Krishna. But as we'll see, we really cannot even begin to discuss. As Lord Brahma says in the 25th verse, Lord Brahma said, if someone says that he knows everything about Krishna's opulence, let him think that way. But as far as I'm concerned, with my body and mind, I consider it in this way. My Lord, your opulence is like an unlimited ocean of nectar, and it is verbally and mentally impossible for me to realize even a drop of that ocean. So we can understand this is a vast ocean when we come to the topic of Krishna's opulences and sweetness. So let us discuss from what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us some very beautiful verses here. So just a quick review from last time. So last time we talked about the greatness of Kali Yuga. What? Kali Yuga is great? Well, it is extraordinary because, and particularly this Kali Yuga, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given the very potent and highly effective means of chanting the holy names of the Lord. And in this section, we're going to see some very high realizations and observations of Krishna, and how they are inobservable by most. And so naturally the feeling may become, if these personalities cannot observe Krishna in this way, what hope do we have? But actually, because of the potency of the Kali Yuga era and the holy names that Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have personally bestowed upon us, we can taste this nectar, which is actually untastable by so many great personalities. And so it is not by the greatness of us, but it is by the greatness of the mercy in this age of Kali. So last time we discussed it, this time we'll actually see it in play. We also talked about Krishna's Leelas being Nitya Lila, meaning Krishna's pastimes are always happening. And every single pastime is continuously happening at all times, just as the sun is shining. And somewhere on the world today it is 10 a.m. And somewhere else it's 11 a.m. And somewhere 12 p.m., 1 p.m., and so on. It's always, there's 1 p.m. somewhere always, because the sun is always present. Like that, Krishna's pastimes are eternally happening. At this moment, right now, Krishna is lifting over the hills in one universe. And in another universe, exactly at this moment, Mother Yashoda is binding Krishna's belly. And in another universe, he is killing Kamsa. And in another universe, he is speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And like this, every single one of his pastimes are in perpetual state of being. And they are going from universe to universe to universe. So like this, Krishna's pastimes are eternal. And these pastimes happen also eternally in this spiritual world. So they're manifest here in the material creation, in each universe when it is a time for Krishna to appear, and also they are constantly going in the spiritual world. So there is no end to these pastimes. And then we spoke about the very impossibility to understand Krishna's opulences. And we spoke about the pastime of Lord Brahma. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used that to illustrate that Lord Brahma wanted to test and to see the great opulence of Krishna, and he stole the cowherd boys and calves. And Krishna manifested himself in so many amazing ways, and ultimately showed Lord Brahma how each cow and calf, each calf and cowherd boy was none other than Lord Vishnu or himself. And it was quite an extraordinary display. And that is what Lord Brahma then recited the verses that we just read. He says, I can't even get a drop of your opulences. having seen how you replicated yourself to each and every one of the cowherd boys in such perfection that even their own mothers could not detect that there was not their own son. Nobody can mirror this type of opulence. And this is just one fragment, one glimpse into the greatness of Krishna. So this is what we discussed last week. So this week we'll carry on now. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is continuing to instruct Sanatana Goswami. And he's going to establish in the beginning of this section that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he'll recite some verses. We'll discuss a little bit about that. And then we're going to see the unlimited opulences of Krishna. And what we're going to see is that even the great personalities like Lord Brahma cannot estimate the greatness of Krishna's opulences. Then what is our scope or hope? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to explain, and he says in the 31st verse, that while describing the transcendental opulences of Krishna, the ocean of opulence manifested in the mind of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his mind thus perplexed, was immersed in this ocean. Thus he was perplexed. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is explaining that these are impossible to describe. But he'll give us a glimpse, a little indication. He says, I wish to give a little indication of these opulences. So we'll discuss this pastime of Lord Brahma and the famous Witch Brahma pastime. And then we'll discuss at the end of this section the beauty of Krishna. And oh, how sweet these verses are. Unfortunately, due to limited time, we'll not be able to read them each one. But if you really want to end your night on a high note, read these last maybe 20 or 15, 20 verses of describing the beauty of Krishna. They're so sweet and beyond compare. But we'll discuss some of the purports and some of the important understandings as we don't have time to read them all. But they are very, very sweet. So, with your permission, that's what we'll discuss today. So we'll read today and read the purport from verse 104, and then we'll back up and carry back. So the verse reads, this is 104, again, Madhya Lila, chapter 21. Rupa deki apanara krishnara haila chamatkara ashvadita mane utte kama swasavogya yamya nama saundarya gunagrama e rupa nitya tara dhamma. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
The wonderful form of Krishna in his personal feature is so great that it attracts even Krishna to taste his own association. Indeed, Krishna becomes eager to taste it. Total beauty, knowledge, wealth, strength, fame, renunciation are the 6 opulences of Krishna. He is eternally situated in his opulence. Purport. Krishna has many pastimes, of which his pastimes in Golok Vrindavan, the Gokul Lila, are supreme. He also has pastimes in the Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, as Vasudev, Shankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. In his pastimes in the spiritual sky, he lies down in the causal ocean as Karanavashriya, the Purusha avatar. His incarnation as a fish, tortoise, and so on are called his causal incarnations. He incarnates in the mode of nature as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. He also incarnates as empowered living entities like Prithu and Vyas. The Supersoul is his localized incarnation, and his all-pervasive aspect is the impersonal Brahman. When we consider impartially all the unlimited pastimes of the Lord, we find that his pastimes as a human being on this planet, wherein he sports as a cowherd boy with a flute in his hand and appears youthful and fresh like a ballet dancer, are pastimes and features that are never subjected to material laws and innate breakings. The wonderful beauty of Krishna is presented in the supreme planet Gokul, Goloka Vrindavan. Inferior to that is his representation in the spiritual sky, and inferior to that is his representation in the external energy Devi Dham. A mere drop of Krishna's sweetness can drown these three worlds, Goloka Vrindavan, Haridham, Vaikuntha Lok, and Devidham, the material world. Everywhere Krishna's beauty immerses everyone in ecstasy of transcendental bliss. Actually, the activities of Yogamaya are absent in the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha planets. She simply works in the supreme planet, Goloka Vrindavan, and she works to manifest the activities of Krishna when he descends to the material universe to please his innumerable devotees within the material world. Thus, a replica of the Govardhan planet and the pastimes there is manifested on this planet, on a special tract of land, Bhoma Vrindavan, the Vrindavan Dham on this planet. Om Jnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttaparakapalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paritam Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Laita Shri Vishakan Vitam Shtam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tata Kanta Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishna Bhanu Ste Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Drubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacham Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shringavari Pashyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So you may remember last week we talked about this concept of perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. And we said, how is that possible if something is perfect and then something can be more perfect and most perfect? Or complete, more complete, and most complete. Well, this is the way in which we must approach when we are talking about the opulences and sweetness of Krishna. Because we're going to compare. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to give some comparisons. And when we give comparisons, we must not think that, some of the expansions of Krishna are incomplete or not perfect. They are perfect. But Krishna is most perfect. So we have to go on that side of the equation. And so we see in this verse, Prabhupada is giving us some indications about the very wonderful pastimes of Krishna and how, in a comparison basis, there are some higher and lower pastimes. And ultimately, this appearance of Krishna is the most perfect, most sweet. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be explaining that. And we have some indication by the presence of Yogamaya, who performs a very special service to the devotees in enhancing their experience with Krishna and enhancing Krishna's experience with his devotees. So we'll discuss that. But now let's kind of back up all the way to the 33rd verse. And here in the 33rd verse, Krishna, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after being immersed in an ocean of bliss, thinking about the opulences of Krishna, he says he began to think of this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. And this becomes the kind of the seed verse for this section up until the beauty. And this verse comes from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it reads, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the master of the three worlds and of the three principal demigods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. No one is equal to or greater than him. By his spiritual potency, known as Swarajya Lakshmi, all his desires are fulfilled. While offering their dues and presents in worship, the predominating deities of all the planets touch the lotus feet of the Lord with their helmets and thus offer prayers to the Lord. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now going to break apart this verse and explain it in great detail over the next almost 70 verses. So this is kind of the root verse. I thought we'd start with reading that one and then begin to discuss. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu follows up this verse because here he says, again quoting, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead of Krishna is the master of the three worlds and the three principal demigods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So he's saying he is the master of the three. Right? And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu states that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is the greatest of all. There is no one equal to him, nor is anyone greater than him. Then, what he does is he quotes from Brahma Samhita, what Lord Brahma's opinion is. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement is in 34, and in 35 we see Lord Brahma's statement, where it says, Krishna, known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. Right? So he is the Ishvara Parama, the ultimate controller. So all our Shastra points to that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. As we discussed last week, the most perfect, the most complete. And from him, everything emanates. So of course, this is a topic of great confusion and uncertainty in the understanding of the various personalities. But here is given very clearly in Srimad Bhagavatam, by the statement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, also by the statement of Lord Brahma. And of course, Lord Shiva makes several statements like this and many others. So this is clearly established in this section. So now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to explain this verse, this word, that Tri Adisha. Tri Adisha means master of the three worlds or natures. So in verses 36 and 37, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the first understanding or the first meaning of this verse. He's going to explain it 3 different ways. So the first meaning is that Krishna is the master of the 3 predominating deities. Right? So the primary predominating deities of material creation are Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. Nonetheless, they simply carry out the orders of Lord Krishna, who is the master of them all. So in verse 36, he establishes that Krishna is the master of that. And then he quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam a statement by Lord Brahma. Right? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making the statement, but then he's going to match that statement from Lord Brahma himself. Following the will, so this is a statement from Lord Brahma. Following the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I create. Lord Shiva destroys. And he himself, in the form of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, maintains all the affairs of material nature. Thus, the supreme controller of the 3 modes of material nature is Lord Vishnu. So, Lord Brahma himself is establishing that. So, this is the general description that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives of this meaning of this Tri Adisha, this master of the 3 natures. Now, the second meaning, or the middle meaning Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives, is that he speaks about even of Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Kshirodaksha Vishnu. Krishna is the original. So he is the master of the 3 Purushas. We spoke about the Purusha avatars 2 weeks ago. And of the 3, Krishna is the supreme. So in verse 40, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, although Mahavishnu, Padmanabh, and Kshirodaksha Vishnu are all shelters and controllers of the entire universe, they are nonetheless but plenary portions, or portions of the plenary portions of Krishna. Therefore, he is the original personality of Godhead. So again, further emphasizing this point, that he is the master not only of Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, but also of Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Kshirodaksha Vishnu. So the 3 plenary portions. So that is the second meaning. Then he now gives the confidential or more inner meaning of this term, this Tri Adisha. And here, what we are going to get is a very detailed glimpse of the whole of creation. what is so wonderful about our Shastra is that everything is described in detail. There's nothing left to guess, or we spoke about the very detailed process of creation and how it comes from sequence to sequence. So here, Krishna, in explaining the inner meaning of this term, is going to give us the understanding of the different realms within the creation. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that in the 42nd verse, he says, "Now please hear the confidential meaning. Lord Krishna has 3 places of residence, which are well known from the revealed scriptures." And Prabhupada writes in the purport, Krishna has 3 abodes. His internal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, his intermediate abode, the spiritual sky, and his external abode, the material world. So, we're going to discuss now these different abodes, and there's a lot of different terms that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu uses in this section, and maybe they're confusing, so I'm going to put them all together in describing these 3, so that when we run across them, we know which of these 3 is being referred to when these different terms are being used. So, and this inner meaning, now the internal abode, we see it called as internal abode. We also see it called as Goloka Vrindavan. Okay? So, all of the personal associates of Krishna reside in Goloka Vrindavan. His mother, his father, his cowherd friends, the gopis, Srimati Radharani. It is his place of personal residence. That is in Goloka Vrindavan. And in verse 44, we see a description of this. Vrindavan is the storehouse of Krishna's mercy and the sweet opulences of conjugal love. That is where the spiritual energy, working as a maidservant, exhibits the rasa dance, the quintessence of all pastimes. So this Goloka Vrindavan, it is the storehouse of Krishna's mercy and opulences. Okay? And so from there, everything is emanating from. And there are 3 divisions within Goloka Vrindavan. There is Gokul, which we understand to be like our Vrindavan. There is a district of Mathura and Dwarka. So all 3 are within the realm of Goloka Vrindavan, and those are all considered also the internal abode. So this is the first of the 3 that Krishna is the master of, or of his residences. So that's the internal abode. Then we come to the spiritual sky. So we see 4 different terms that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu uses in describing. He says, what? The spiritual sky, 1. Vaikunta, 2. Haridam, 3. And the Paravyom. So these 4 are all synonymous for the spiritual world just below Goloka Vrindavan. Okay? So Krishna has innumerable planets in the spiritual sky in this 2nd level, and each are controlled by a form of Narayan and other expansions of Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the spiritual sky, again, the Vaikuntha Loka realm, which is full in all 6 opulences, is the intermediate residence of Lord Krishna. It is there that in unlimited forms of Krishna enjoy their pastimes. So it is not the direct residence of Krishna, it is the intermediate, meaning his expansions are residing there. Where is Krishna's direct residence? Goloka Vrindavan. But this realm, we should understand, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, it is full in all 6 opulences. So it is also perfect. So don't think, oh, because it's below Goloka Vrindavan, it's no, it is perfect. But most perfect. We have to take those together in simultaneous. Right? So now we see here that in that verse 47, it says, forms of Krishna enjoy their pastimes there, but not Krishna himself. If we read in Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami is giving the different gradations. he says greater than Vaikuntha is Vrindavan Dham here in the material world. And we think how a place in the material world can be superior to even Vaikuntha. And then he explains, because in Vaikuntha, Krishna never personally enters and walks. But here on this planet Earth, Krishna's footsteps have placed in Vrindavan Dham. And that makes it even higher than Vaikuntha. So we know from this that Krishna doesn't perform any pastimes in Vaikuntha, but he does through his expansions, through his forms. And importantly, the residents of Vaikuntha also are full of opulences. So they share Lord Narayan's opulences. And one final comment about Vaikuntha. What is the meaning of Vaikuntha? It means no misery. It is Vaikuntha, no misery. So it is a place of perfection. It is a place of perfection. Let us not mistake. It is a place of where the pure devotees reside. And it is a place where there is service in the mood of awe and reverence. So this is the second realm, or the intermediate realm of Krishna's presence. Right? He resides in three places: his personal residence, his intermediate, and now we'll see the external abode. Right? And just before we discuss that, we should understand now, in the context of the total creation, Goloka, Vrindavan, and all the Vaikuntha realm, the spiritual sky, they comprise 3/4 of the total creation. So the material universes, all collectively, not just our universe, but the unlimited number of universes, they occupy 1/4 of the creation, and the spiritual world occupies 3/4. Of course, the spiritual world is unlimited. So when we say 3/4, 1/4, it is simply to give us a frame of reference of the relative size. The spiritual world is gigantic. Sometimes you wonder, if everybody goes back home, back to Godhead, is there enough space for everybody? Don't worry. There's always room. It never is full of, never has a no vacancy sign. There's plenty of room for everybody. But it is considered, that's why it's called Tripada Bhuta, and the material world is called Ekapada Bhuta, meaning 1/4 versus 3/4. Okay? So now the third realm is called the external abode. This is the material world, or also called Devi Dham. So Mahaprabhu uses the word Devi Dham, the external abode, or the material world. And of course, Krishna is present here through all of his energies, and then he makes himself personally known through his appearances from time to time. Now this realm sits across the Viraja River. So the Viraja River marks the delineation between spiritual and material. So the spiritual sky in Goloka Vrindavan, the internal abode and the intermediate abode are above the Viraja River, and the material creation is below. So just giving some context for the situation. And it is called Devi Dham because the conditioned souls here are placed under the care of Durga Devi, who is serving Krishna according to his plan. So she is administering the various affairs. And Prabhupada explained that Durga, it means directly fort, but Du means difficult. So like a fort is very difficult to enter and exit. This material world is also very difficult to exit. And thus the predominating deity of this fort or this material world is called Durga. So that is Durga Devi. And she is the eternal servant of Krishna, serving him as part of his Shakti focus. Okay? So these are the three abodes. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in verse 57, he says, the 3/4 part of Lord Krishna's energy is beyond our speaking power. Let us therefore hear elaborately about the remaining 1/4 of his energy. So he's saying it's beyond our ability to even speak about the spiritual world. So let us try to speak about the material world. And so here is where we're going to get a wonderful pastime. So Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are considered the governors of the material world, right? So they are here from the beginning to the end, and they manage all of the different affairs, the creation and destruction at the end of each kalpa, at the end of each day, and ultimately the final destruction. So the jivas may come and go, but Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are considered the permanent governors for the duration of this universe. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells a story to try to indicate to us how vast the material creation is. When we say there are unlimited universes, it's hard for us to contextualize that, to understand that. You know, we use the example that each universe is like a grain of sand. And so when we say how many grains of sand are there on a mile-long beach, you can't even count how many grains of sand in a palmful of sand. If you pull up a palmful of sand, you cannot even count those. So how you can count how many grains in a long... Like that, we try to understand the vastness of the material creation. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to tell us this story, this very famous story of which Brahma, and let us understand what is the main takeaway of this story. The main takeaway is to illustrate the insignificant position of us. We are tiny, tiny part and parcels of Krishna. Lord Brahma, relative to us, is very great, right? He has been here from the beginning. He is the empowered creator. He is sitting atop in Brahma Loka. He is an extraordinary personality. So us, relative to him, we are very inferior. So now Lord Brahma is going to see how small he is in comparison to Krishna. So the conclusion should be then, if we are quite small in comparison to Lord Brahma, then our position in relationship to Krishna is very small. We're a tiny, insignificant speck. And so that is the main purport of this pastime of which Brahma. Right? So let us make sure that's what we're trying to understand and walk away from. But it's a very nice and sweet story that explains the vastness of the universe. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that the position of Brahma is like a post. So Brahma is not a person, it's a position. Just like, you know, the mayor of a city. The mayor is a post, it's not a person. The mayor may be Tom Smith or whoever, but it's a person occupies it. So Lord Brahma is like that, right? So Lord Brahma is a post that is occupied by different jiva tattvas, and occasionally by a Vishnu tattva. So that's a different time story. So once, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was explaining this now in these verses, that Lord Brahma had gone to see Krishna in Dwarka. And so of course Krishna had some, gatekeepers, some security guards, and they asked when Lord Brahma appeared, what is your business here? I come to see Krishna. And so they ask, who is it? It's Lord Brahma. So it's okay. So they go to Krishna and say, Lord Brahma is here to see you. So Lord Krishna knows. He always is all-knowing. So he sends back a message with the security guard. He says, ask them, which Brahma? And so they come back and they say, which Brahma are you? And Lord Brahma is confused. What do you mean, which Brahma are you? I'm Brahma. And he says, I'm Brahma, father of the Kumaras. I'm Brahma, four-headed Brahma. Tell him that. So they tell Krishna, go back and tell Krishna, yes, this is that. And he says, okay, let him in. So Lord Brahma enters, and Krishna, he sees Krishna, and Krishna says, oh, Brahma, you have come. What is your business? What do you have come to ask me something? And he says, I did, but let me first ask you another question that has come to my mind. And he said, why did you ask which Brahma? Is there any other Brahma? And then Krishna smiled. And he just meditated for a moment. Just a millisecond. And within a millisecond, unlimited number of Brahmas appeared in that hall. And Lord Brahma is looking around. oh, what has happened? Unlimited number of Brahmas, instantly. And he saw, some of them had 10 heads, some had 20, 100, even millions of heads, hundreds of millions of heads. You could not count them. And he thought, wow. And then many Lord Shivas came, and Lord Indra's arrived, and he thought, what is going on? And in verse 69, we get a feeling of his mood. When the four-headed Brahma of this universe saw all these opulences of Krishna, he became very much bewildered and considered himself a rabbit amongst many elephants. A rabbit amongst elephants feels very small. So Lord Brahma is situated like this, and he's shocked. What is going on? He only has 4 heads. And now what we see is a very important understanding. So I made a statement just a few moments ago about the moral of this story, and maybe that left you feeling a little disheartened. When I said we are tiny, insignificant specks, that is a fact. And that should always breed then this feeling of humility. Because we are tiny, insignificant specks. Whatever we can do, it is very small in comparison to Krishna. So that is a fact. And the conclusion is, one should always be very humble. It's very easy to be humble when we realize, I'm a tiny speck. According to, in relation to Lord Brahma, we are tiny. And now Lord Brahma feels tiny amongst the other Lord Brahmas. But that statement should not lead us to think we are insignificant to Krishna. We should not think that we are insignificant to Krishna. We are very dear to Krishna. Though we are tiny and insignificant, we are not insignificant to him. And let me explain. And these next verses really illustrate that. So when all the Brahmas came to see Krishna, they all offered their respects to him, and their helmets touched his lotus feet. Now, you can imagine, when like the spiritual master comes, we all try to offer obeisances, but how many of us can get close to his lotus feet? Handful, few. But here, unlimited number of Brahmas with hundreds and millions of heads, all were able to touch his feet at the same time. Then Chaitanya Caritamrita says, no one can estimate the inconceivable potencies. And when all the helmets struck together at the lotus feet, it made this very tumultuous sound. Right? And then, with folded hands, all the Brahmas and Shivas began to offer prayers to the Lord. Now, if 10 people in the room are speaking at once, does anything productive happen? No, it is complete chaos. But here, millions of Brahmas are offering prayers to Krishna. But it gets even more interesting. All of them then said, it's my great fortune, Lord, that you have called me, thinking of me as your servant. Now let me know, what is your order for me? So, each of the Brahmas that came, they saw Krishna speaking to him. So the point is that though there are millions of Lord Brahmas, though there are unlimited number of living entities, each and every one of them simultaneously maintains a very deep and personal relationship with Krishna. And this is one of the extraordinary opulences of Krishna. That, yes, we are insignificant, but we are not insignificant to him. So we may wonder, oh, will Krishna ever know me? There are so many other devotees far, far more superior to me, so many personalities. But see how Krishna was interacting with each and every of the Lord Brahmas. There was no inability for him to reciprocate. And then it said, hold on, I want to read one more verse. the opulence of Dwarka was perceived by each and every one of them. Although they were all assembled together, no one could see anyone but himself. So Krishna was giving each a one-on-one audience. Meaning each of the Brahmas felt, oh, I'm having a personal darshan with Krishna. You know, when some great person comes, we want time, we compete. I want time, you want time, we compete. But with Krishna, there's no competition because his opulences are unlimited. He personally interacts with everyone as if they're the only one in his consciousness. And so, yes, we are insignificant, but Krishna maintains such an extraordinary personal relationship with everyone. And this pastime shows us how he was reciprocating with each of them individually. And what Krishna says in the, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the 78th verse, this is the proof of the opulences. All the Brahmas thought Krishna is now staying in my jurisdiction. They all thought he's in with me, one-on-one. So again, yes, we are very small. We are so dear to Krishna. So we also will have, and do have, a very deep, personal, one-to-one relationship with Krishna. So do not confuse our insignificance with distance from the Supreme Lord. And this pastime shows us this in powerful. So it proves to us that we are insignificant, but it also at the same time proves to us that we have the opportunity to have a very deep and personal relationship with the Supreme Lord. And we see this in many pastimes. You know, in Govardhan Lila, everybody is enjoying personal interaction with Krishna. All the residents of Vrindavan had gathered under one place. Well, if all the residents gathered under one place, somebody must be in back, somebody must be in middle, somebody must be in front. Yet every resident perceived as if Krishna was standing right in front of them. Even if they were on the side, on the back, or the front. Krishna was situated in the middle of Govardhan. And everybody was around him. Yet everybody was seeing him one-to-one. How that is possible? In the Rasa Lila, all the gopis thought, oh, Krishna is dancing with me. The cowherd boy is having prasad with Krishna. Oh, Krishna is having prasad with me. So we see this over and over and over again. But this is another very powerful example of that, of this personal relationship. So let us not forget our insignificance. As Lord Brahma felt a rabbit amongst elephants, so we have no scope for ever becoming proud or full of ego. But let us also not forget our very deep and personal relationship with Krishna. So the response from Lord Brahma in this is very brilliant. In verse 82 and 83, Brahmaji said, whatever I formerly decided about my knowledge, I have just now personally verified. And then he says, you know, the same verse we read, there are people who say, I know everything about Krishna. Let them think in that way. As far as I'm concerned, I do not wish to speak very much about this matter. Oh my Lord, let me say this much. As far as your opulences are concerned, they are all beyond the reach of my mind, body, and words. So when Lord Brahma experienced this very extraordinary position, he felt this way. Of course, this is a statement from Srimad Bhagavatam. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on to explain actually that, you know, the heads of Brahma represent the size of the universe. So our universe is actually quite small because, you know, represented by Lord Brahma's 4 heads. And how big our universe is, Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur gives some illustration. It's 18 quadrillion, 712 trillion, 69 billion, 200 million. All that times 8 is the circumference of this universe. So we can't even begin to calculate it. But it's actually given the exact dimensions even of this universe. But that one is small. So the more number of heads is explained to be the larger and larger universes. So not every universe is of the same size either. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells this story to remind us again that we can only grasp a tiny glimpse of Krishna's opulences within the material realm. Remember, he said, I can't even speak about the spiritual realm. Let's speak about the material world. But to speak even about the material world, he illustrates the story also to show we can only grasp even a tiny bit of it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then goes on to say that no one can measure the size of the universe. It's impossible. And he says, well, then what hope do we have to speak about the spiritual world? And so then we may lament, oh no, he's not going to speak about the spiritual world. How many of us want to hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speak about the spiritual world? Of course we do. So thankfully, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, though we're not able to speak, let us speak something about it. So he said, the unlimited potency of Krishna are just like an ocean nectar. Since one cannot bathe within that ocean, I've only touched a drop of it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, let us now just touch a small drop of Krishna's opulences. So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to introduce the opulences of Krishna. And in verse 100, he gives this very important verse. To exhibit the strength of his own spiritual potency, Lord Krishna manifests a form suitable for his pastimes in the material world. This form was wonderful even for him, and was the supreme abode of the wealth of good fortune. Its limbs were so beautiful that they increased the beauty of the ornaments worn on the different parts of his body. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now going to speak about the beauty of Krishna, one of his 6 opulences. Krishna is full in 6 opulences. And so now, I wish I could read all of these verses, the next 20 or 30 verses, but it's getting a little bit late. So these verses are worth reading a few times. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says to Sanatana Goswami, my dear Sanatana, the sweet, attractive, transcendental form of Krishna is so nice. Just try to understand it. Even a fractional understanding of Krishna's beauty can merge all the worlds in an ocean of love. He attracts all the living entities within the 3 worlds. So though we cannot understand it, we just need to get a glimpse of it, just a tiny bit of it. And just a tiny bit is enough to inundate, flood the whole world in love of Krishna. So don't worry, I'll never grasp it all. Nobody will. But we don't need it all. We just need a tiny glimpse of it to awaken this dormant love. And I'm going to conclude this section because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is then going to tell us how to actually taste this beauty. Because when we hear about this beauty, it's remarkable. So, Krishna's form, it is shown to us in the material world by Yogamaya. It is a form from his eternal pastimes. So, it is only present in Goloka Vrindavan and the Vrindavan here in the material world. So when Krishna decides to descend from the spiritual world, the Vrindavan Dham descends also. So this Vrindavan Dham is also considered non-different from Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. And Krishna descends here. Okay? So now Krishna says, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in this 104th verse, that even Krishna wants to taste his own sweetness. And we see Rupa Goswami gives this very beautiful pastime in Lalita Madhava, that Lord Krishna, when he was in his palace of Dwarka, when he saw on a pillar this very beautiful jewel, and then he's walking by this pillar, in the jewel he saw his reflection. And he's like, I have never seen such a person before. Who is this person? Just by seeing him, I've become eager to embrace, just like Radharani wanted to embrace me. He was stunned by his own beauty. Even Krishna cannot fully understand his own beauty. It is so extraordinary. And it is never ending, meaning the beauty is always increasing. It never tires. We never go. Our definitions of beauty, if you look in society, it changes. right? Over time, certain types of people are considered beautiful, and then later other types of people are considered beautiful. The taste and the times change. But Krishna, he is all attractive. He is supremely beautiful. You know, we'll see at the end of this section, his beauty is so intense and so intoxicating and so magnanimous and attractive that the gopis never want to stop looking at him. Now, in looking at Krishna, the gopis are really angry at Lord Brahma. They're very upset with him. They say, Lord Brahma, why you gave us eyelids? Because every time we blink, that fraction of a second. Now, when we blink, we don't perceive any interruption in what we're looking, right? We don't perceive any interruption. But Krishna's beauty is so attractive to the gopis that imperceivable moment for us was like years for them of separation from Krishna. That's how beautiful Krishna is. And so they are chastising, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is quoting some of these verses at the end of this section, how this creator could be so foolish to put eyelids on us. They're blocking our view of Krishna. And we talked about Govardhan Lila. In Govardhan Lila, now if you are stuck in one place, standing for 7 days, you couldn't go beyond maybe a 2-foot area, what your state of mind would be. 7 days. Forget 7 days, even 7 hours. We would be miserable, anxious, stressed. But for 7 days, all the residents of Vrindavan, they did one thing. And they were just staring at Krishna. They were drinking his beauty. And each moment that they saw Krishna, it was more sweeter than the prior moment. And like this for minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, they didn't even move. They didn't even drink anything, eat anything, sleep. They just were taking in Krishna's beauty. And by the end of 7 days, they were feeling like they couldn't even begin to taste his beauty, that they needed more. Imagine how beautiful Krishna is, that what in the whole of the material world we could stare at for even 7 minutes before we want to move on to the next thing. Yet for 7 days, Krishna's beauty was so extraordinary that they were not even satiated. It was ever increasing how much they were enjoying the beauty. So this is the position of Lord Krishna's opulence, his beauty. We'll read a couple more verses. Ornaments caress that body, but the transcendental body of Krishna is so beautiful that it beautifies the ornaments he wears. So this is a very important point. You know, when we put jewelry on Krishna and we decorate his body, we think, like in ourselves, we decorate our body to beautify us. But Krishna is the source of beauty. So when the garland goes on Krishna, Krishna is making the garland look beautiful. When the earrings adorn his ears, he is making the earrings look beautiful. Not the earrings are making him look beautiful. He is the source of all beauty. That is the proper understanding. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reads this verse, that the body of Krishna is so beautiful that it beautifies the ornaments. So we should understand this. 106. The beauty of Krishna's body is so attractive that it attracts not only the demigods and other living entities within this material world, but the personalities of the spiritual sky as well, including the Narayanas, who are expansions of Krishna's personality. The minds of the Narayanas are thus attracted by the beauty of Krishna's body. In addition, the goddess of fortune Lakshmi, who are the wives of the Narayans, and the women described in the Vedas as most chaste, are also attracted by the beauty of Krishna. So even Lord Narayan himself is attracted by the extraordinary beauty of Krishna. And this means that even Lord Krishna, compared to the Lord Narayan, the beauty is incomparable, right? Because if you're attracted to someone else's beauty, it means it's something beyond what you have. So even Lakshmi Devi, who is the eternal servant of Lord Narayan, Lakshmi Devi, when she heard of Krishna's pastimes in Rasa Lila, had a strong desire. Now we have to understand, if we try to observe this from external circumstances, we may think, wait a minute, isn't that, wait, she's a servant of Lord Narayan, now she's going, Narayan and Krishna are one and the same, representing two different potencies. So there is no transgression here. But Lakshmi Devi was so desirous that she abandoned everything and went to Belvan in the district of Vrindavan and performed intense austerities. And it said she is still performing intense austerities to obtain entry into this pastime. So she's even leaving her service to obtain the mercy and darshan of Krishna. So this just gives us some indication to Krishna's extraordinary beauty. Now, the other thing that we should understand is that Krishna is the source of all things beautiful. Whatever we find beauty around us in the world, it is because of Krishna. He is the source of all beauty. So, in fact, when we think about it, then by definition, the only thing we'll ultimately ever find fully beautiful is the Supreme Lord. Because we may find beauty in this thing and that thing or something else. But where it comes from and who has it in full? Only Krishna. He is the source of it all. Krishna's flute. When Lord Krishna wanders in the forest of Vrindavan with his friends on an equal level, there are innumerable cows grazing. There is another of Lord's blissful enjoyments. When he plays on his flute, all living entities, including trees, plants, animals, and human beings, tremble and are saturated with jubilation. Tears flow constantly from their eyes. All living entities, when the flute is played by Krishna, it is explained that the birds, they stop their flight in midair. They are stunned by the sweet sounds of Krishna's flute. The rivers, they stop flowing. And like this, so many beautiful descriptions are given. But the flute is so beautiful and so captivating. The ladies of Mathura, when they are seeing Krishna enter Mathura and enter the stadium, they are glorifying. They say, wow, what austerities the gopis must have performed. With their eyes, they always drink the nectar of the form of Lord Krishna, which is the essence of loveliness and is not equaled or surpassed. That loveliness is the only abode of beauty, fame, and opulence. It is self-perfect, ever fresh, and unique. So these are the residents of Mathura commenting on the beauty of Krishna. There is no comparison. The sweetness of Krishna's beauty enjoyed by the gopis is unparalleled, it says. Unparalleled. Very, very hard to beat that. No comparison. Even there is a competition of sweetness and happiness between Krishna and the gopis. And that you have to read in verse 118. And now we get to the very important point. So Krishna's beauty is extraordinary. We see the great fortune that even Lord Narayan himself is enjoying the beauty of Krishna. So then we may ask, what is our hope? How we will ever be able to drink the beauty and understand the beauty of Krishna. So Krishna gives us now in the verse Chaitanya Caritamrita 119 a very nice summary statement. He says the transcendental mellows generated from the dealings between the gopis and Krishna cannot be tasted by means of fruitive activity, yogic austerities, speculative knowledge, regulated devotional service, mantra yoga, or meditation. Wait a minute. Even regulated devotional service or mantra meditation, we cannot see the beauty. Oh boy, what to do? Hold on. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continues. This sweetness can be tasted only through the spontaneous love of liberated persons who chant the holy names with great ecstatic love. So all we have to do is take to the process of chanting the holy names of the Lord. And with sincere chanting, we will raise ourselves to the platform of this spontaneous love and become able to see and also participate in this great beauty of Krishna. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then says, such ecstatic transactions between Krishna and the gopis are possible only in Vrindavan. And Krishna is the original source of all transcendental qualities. So, the transcendental qualities are, Krishna is the source of them all. And he tells us here, all of it can be achieved by chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we should know for sure, he has come specifically to give us the process of devotional service, to take us back to Goloka Vrindavan, and specifically to experience this most perfect rasa of Madhurya Rasa with Krishna. So yes, we are tiny and insignificant, but by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have been given the gift, the ability to achieve the greatest of all things that even Lord Narayan and Lakshmi Devi herself are also aspiring for. And that has been given to us in this age of Kali by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Now we can all agree, the age of Kali, we are very fortunate. We are very fortunate. We are very fortunate. And we are most fortunate because somehow we have come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, who has presented us this incredible nectar so that we can have some glimpse of understanding. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry for going late. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Koti Vaishnava Vrinda.
Jai.
Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Any comments or discussion, questions today? I know it's late.
Okay, one question. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
So initially you mentioned that Krishna performs the pastimes in a different universe. So is it the same pastimes all everywhere?
Yeah, we understand that it is the same set of pastimes that are repeating in each universe. So the 125 years that he appears in that duration in all universes.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare.
Thank you. We're fortunate to have this.
Hare. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare. Your phone is cutting out. It's not coming clear. Okay, I can hear you now.
Thank you so much for a beautiful class. As always, every time is more and more something beautiful. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you for a wonderful class, Prabhuji. It's very, very beautiful. Couple of questions. First question is that our Brahma is the food actually the basically our universe, is it really the smallest or is it one of the smallest? That's my first question. Is it actually hydrated by Brahma too? With
I'm not aware of any other.
first question.
Yeah, not aware of any. As my understanding is a four. Mataji, your phone is cutting. Can you?
Which are serving Narayana.
Okay, now
It's okay, Prabhuji, then I'll ask you later.
no, now it's back. Now it's back.
I think. Yeah, just a comment there, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for explaining that part that those who are tiny, insignificant specks, but at the same time, we are not insignificant to Krishna, which is a tendency for us to kind of get overwhelmed with that feeling too.
Yeah.
And also that fact that you mentioned, which I never really portrayed, that you and put two and two together, how actually in Krishna also all these pastimes is actually explaining that he is having a personal relationship with is having a personal relationship with all of us, just like in Govardhan Lila, we talked about in Gopi, Ras Lila, and the other Gopis. So that personal relationship in the pastime explains that we have a personal relationship too. I never put two and two together. So that was a very wonderful thing. Regarding the Lakshmi one, I don't have a question now. I will ask the next time. Thank you so much. Hare
Hare Krishna. Dhanavad. Yes. Yeah, this personal relationship with all of us, it is one of Krishna's amazing opulences, right? Because it takes great potency to be able to do that. To maintain a personal relationship with so many people, that is a great, it takes a great ability. And so, Srila Prabhupada had that powerful ability. I know, many of our spiritual masters, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he has this great ability to develop this very personal relationship with everyone. So these are, potencies coming from Krishna. He definitely, and that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that point in this Lila to help inspire us, both insignificant yet significant to Krishna. Thank you. Anything else?
Actually, one more question, sorry. So the last one we talked 119. So there what we are trying to understand is this transcendental mellows of the Gopi, Ras Leela and all those things. So it is okay to kind of get the feeling that okay, I'm not able to really I'm awestruck by it, by how wonderful and sweet it can be, but I'm really not able to understand it. So is it okay to understand that way? Or basically, because some people can really understand it very beautifully too. So if one is not able to understand, so how does that come about? Basically,
Yeah,
are we in a position to?
we are in a position to understand it under the right construct. So, because again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us that rasa. So he is exhibiting specifically that rasa and vipralamba. So, by following the instructions and taking the shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, that will become known to us also in time. We should not rush to come to know it, meaning it may be building us some time, and as we work our way through Srimad Bhagavatam and come to the 10th canto, we may read it many times and understand through our acharyas, but ultimately it'll come through the purification by following the process that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has outlined for us. And so, and we know that centers around good chanting. So by good chanting, that understanding will become very clear to us, and that's why we don't speak about it so much, right? Because there's no need, and one, because it can get misunderstood, and also it will become known. Just halfway by the process of purifying and following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, it'll happen. That's when he came to present specifically.
That means that basically one will be in a position to understand it only when they come to the position of spontaneous love that Raghunaga Bhakti. It will be not in the sadhana bhakti. Am I correct on that?
Remember, there's different levels of understanding, right? So you'll understand it to some degree, and then you'll understand it some more. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, right? If you read chapter 2, you understand it to some degree, right? But you can't say you understand it fully either. But then Later, you read it again, you'll understand it more. And you read it again, you'll understand it more. And when does it end? It never does. So this thing, same thing. This bhav, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to talk about Madhurya Rasa. It's going to talk about it more elaborately coming up. And so we'll understand some degree of it. And then we'll do it again, and as we purify, we'll understand more and more. So it's not like an on or off. It's a progressive understanding. But to completely relish it, one must be not only in Raghunath, one must be in Krishna Prema. Full love. Because that's when it's fully revealed. Otherwise, there's always potential for some concoction, right? Because it's such a pure form of love that if there's any other impurities, it'll taint the whole thing. So, but we'll understand it to degrees as we progress. It's not like we won't know anything and all of a sudden we'll know everything. Okay? So you can read some of those pastimes. If you want to read it and understand it too, I suggest you read Krishna book. Because in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada gives very good purports and kind of explanations and presentations. There's a whole chapter just on the introduction to it, which gives us some consequence or understanding of how we should approach it. But in Krishna book, he gives very nice detail of how to understand it, what not to do, and so that's a good place to start. And again, Srila Prabhupada wasn't encouraging us to stay away from it either, right? He presented Krishna book very early in his book transit. He wanted us to understand it, but understand it properly. So, again, there will be degrees of understanding. We'll fully relish it, fully taste it, when we are fully purified.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Thank you very much. So I'm here. Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda. Hare Krishna.